I'm Chris Lee of VandySports.com. Bruno Reagan, former Commodore, joins me. He is also part of our staff at VandySports.com. I watched Vanderbilt's loss from Stanford at home. Bruno was there in the press box watching tonight. Bruno, I'll just let you start with comments on the game in general and how you felt it went.
Yeah, I think obviously at first it looked like it was going to be a competitive game. But coming into it, I didn't expect obviously I didn't expect much, Chris. I thought they were clicking a heck of a lot on offense. Obviously the defense, it looked like it was going to be a shootout, and I knew that Vanderbilt wasn't going to be able to last in a shootout. We just don't have the effective efficiency to perform at that level yet. And to be honest, they were just running at us at will. I saw a lot of good things though. The changes to the O-line are working in some ways. We're getting a lot better of a push in the run game, and it shows. There was a lot of energy. Something I was really proud of was the limited amount of penalties we got, until the very, very end. Then they started to get popped a little bit. But something we did see regress a bit was the special teams, specifically in the coverage, though. So overall, the game went kind of how I expected. So I'm not too emotionally swayed one way or the other. I know there was that chance where it looked like hey, we might win, but then there was that collapse. Like Ken Seals was getting hit a lot tonight, like a lot, and that's gonna affect his stat line 100%. That's an O-line stat just as much as it is a quarterback stat.
Yeah, let's go back to the last couple of minutes of the first half. And interestingly enough, we go back a week ago to Colorado State. The last 2 minutes of the first half was where everything changed. Vanderbilt got some momentum and won the game. Tonight, it was the opposite. It was where everything changed the wrong way. Stanford gets 10 points in the last 2 minutes. There's a pick, a touchdown, a field goal, and just some bad plays and penalties in there in between. This is the team that just doesn't have a big margin for error, and I think it spent all of it right there.
Yeah, that was tough, and that kind of encapsulates what the team is going to go through. It's not just going to be like this game; it's going to be a while. Before the season, I was predicting like a 3-win season, and I think it's going to be we're going to see one of the games where they play at a level of execution perfect. Like it basically acts the pre-halftime mistakes that they made, and then they come out probably a different team at halftime, much more competitive, and they sneak a win in one of these future games. This time they didn't. They played a solid half of football. Well, offense, special teams played enough of a solid half of football. Defense didn't give them a lot of help, but that's football too. Sometimes the defense comes out to play, sometimes the offense comes out to play, and one has to carry the other. If you can get all three, good. You're probably going to stomp a team, but that's just not. I don't know if we'll see that storm, and it's hard enough to get one phase of the game playing really well. I was impressed with some of the stuff we saw today. There's obviously so much still that we need to get better, but I'm still optimistic, a lot more optimistic. Considering we lost to ETSU by however much we did, 20 points just two or 3 weeks ago.
And that's exactly what Clark Lee said tonight. He said we just could not get all three phases of the game working at once. The one phase that's been consistent this year has been special teams. Tonight, that fell through. A missed field goal, which that wasn't a big deal. A 52-yard miss. Nobody in the NFL blinks if they miss that, right? But it was just the punt returns. I mean, it was really, I think the key play of the game was that punt return at the end of the first half, because penalty, whatever, if you don't get a 48-yard return, none of that stuff happens. I mean, I just thought that was, I say the key play. The drive before that was the pick and then the touchdown. But that was the one that was really demoralizing, because you can go into half thinking, okay, we're down a little bit. We gave one up at the end. We probably should have. But then you give up two like that back-to-back. And I feel like they never got it back from that point on.
Yeah, and considering they were already playing a bit from behind, they were constantly having to catch up, constantly having to catch up. It did, you could tell it seeped into the players' minds, players and coaches. I think there's a legitimate cause of concern or criticism, you could say, where were they coaching? You can ask the question, were they coaching to win the whole game? I think at one point it kind of shifted to where it was like, okay, we'll just punt, we'll take the field position. That's something at least that never, well, it never happened when I was there under Coach Mason. We were always playing to win. We go for it on fourth and whatever from the 50. If it meant, the clock was against us and we had to go for the win, we would do it. I think this staff, kind of sat back, analyzed where they were at as a team, and just took the opportunity to play probably a lot more conservative than some people were happy with.
I asked Clark Lee in the press conference about tempo because they went tempo early.
Hey, you're muted right now, Chris.
Oh, hey, sorry. I asked Clark Lee in the press conference about tempo because they went tempo early. It worked. They had some momentum. You felt for a while like maybe this is the night if they really play a mistake-free game from here on out, maybe they've got a shot. And then they just went away from it. And his answer was, we use it to deliver like a knockout punch. He said something about, knockout punch wasn't the word, and I'm going to try to look through my notes as I talk about this, but he talked about them being the best conditioned team in the country and some things like that, and they use it to apply pressure. I don't know, what I didn't get was, and then he talked about it later as if it was these are my words, game flow thing, but it almost sounded like, I don't know how to put it, but it's like it's a tool you've got in your bag to use when you want to use it, but they didn't feel like it was the tool to use in that circumstance. I'd have to go back and watch it again, but I just did not understand. It seems to me like this year when they've taken the bull by the horn in those spots, it's worked for them more often than not. And in a game where you can't stop Stanford, right? And maybe part of it's wanting to get your defense some rest. If it doesn't work, I don't know. But again, I go back to the comment that they think that they're very well conditioned. I'm not saying that they're not, but I'd have to go back and listen to it again. But the rationale for why they went away from it, I don't know. It was a little hard to digest.
Yeah, well, I agree. A lot of people see that the tempo is working, but I also understand the coaching viewpoint where you can't just go tempo the whole game, because it could lead to very quick 3-and-outs. It could lead to the defense eventually settling in. It's a good thing to keep a defense on its toes, and it was obviously very successful. But you have to learn how to run plays from the huddle and from base. And I get, as a fan, it's very frustrating to see there was something clearly working. Why do we stop doing it? Well, I don't think it's really just from a personal opinion on the game, I don't think it was a path to victory either. I don't think just magically going tempo with Ken, because when you go tempo, you have probably like 5 or 6 solid plays. There might be some different route combinations you can call, but it's basically inside zone. Some of it has a handoff. Maybe they have an outside zone one-worder, and then they have some jet protections, which is just 6-man protections, maybe 2 5-man protections, and that's your entire playbook. And this is what people have to accept. This is, a learning year. This is a learning year. I know we've had those a lot in the past. People are probably tired of waiting, but this team has to learn how to perform from the huddle with a calculated play against a drawn-up defense that they've practiced against for weeks. They have to learn how to compete against that. We can't just throw tempo at them, I think, the whole game and expect it to work. If we did, I think we would eventually wear ourselves out, because you can be the best conditioned team in the country if you just, go 3-and-out, or maybe, long drive, but go 3-and-out again. All of a sudden your defense is just getting worked, especially when Stanford's running the ball on them, relentlessly. I think this is just – I think the game was coached, decently enough to where if the rosters were the same, we might have seen a competitive game, but we know we're dealing with, less hand in the deck.
Well, and that's the thing that I wanted to hit next, right? There may be some things that they could have done differently with coaching, but you watch that game, and you especially watch the one-on-one matchups and the people in open field and all those situations, and every time you looked at it, Stanford just had better athletes.
Yeah.
it wasn't the most physical run defense we've seen, and that is one thing that went well for Vanderbilt, is that it ran the ball well, but Stanford's pass rush compared to Vanderbilt's, there's really not much comparison. And so I'm watching that game, and when it gets well into the second half and you kind of know how it's going to end more or less, I'm just thinking to myself, they could play this game 10 times in that building. Vanderbilt might win one, maybe two, but I don't think any more than that, and one might be where I'd settle.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it, and no one more than me, Chris. We gotta expect to win. Especially those players in the locker room have to go out there expecting to win. They can't go out there and be like, okay, this week we're going to take this step and hopefully only lose by 20. Like, you can't think like that. That's just not how it can go. But us as the quote unquote, analysts or talkers, I guess you could say, we have to understand that viewpoint where we know where the team's at, Chris. Like, you and I have covered the team for a while. We know where it's at, and we know what it's capable of, and it's just not really up to par yet. The run game went well on the offense, but other than that, we were struggling pretty badly in pass protection. Ken was getting hit all night. There was a lot of open field tackling issues again. Wide receivers were dropping balls they should have caught, and then they were losing most of the 50-50s. Like, they're called 50-50s because you lose half of them. But tonight they were more like 80-20s. We were losing a majority of toss-up balls. That just can't happen.
Stanford won a ton of toss-up balls tonight, too. I mean, look, we talk about Vanderbilt, but that's a team that, I don't know, they're probably an average Power 5 team, which that tells you a lot about the talent gap that they've got to make up. And again, most of this year, whatever goes wrong, the die on a lot of this was cast before the year. I think there are things they could have done better. I don't think they should have lost to ETSU. But again, you saw it on display tonight with your own eyes. And if you think that Vanderbilt's got Stanford-level talent right now, I would just tell you to watch the game with a more critical eye. But, yeah, I mean, and let's go back to the line of scrimmage tonight, okay? They ran the ball well, and I want you to get into that in a minute because I thought, they started Julian Hernandez at center. I think that helped. They started Cox and Clemens at guards, and I thought those three, and you would know more than I would, but it seemed like a lot of holes came between the tackles, which I would think that a lot of the credit would obviously have to go to those guys. But then pass protection, it was just a different game. I mean, they just couldn't pass protect all night. What did you see as you watched offensive line, good, bad, indifferent in both phases of the game?
Oh, you'll get me worked up now. I could talk O-line all day. In the run game, we saw a lot of really good. I was really, really watching the gap scheme earlier in the past two games have been terrible. Gap scheme being powers, counters, things like that. I don't think we were positive yardage on any of them. Tonight they hit a few. The Rocco Griffith spin was a power. Cole Clemens pulled out to the right, kicked it out. The other guys flooded the line. It created two walls and a wide open hole for Rocco, and then Rocco made the secondary miss, and that's how we got such a big play out of that. So it was good to see the gap scheme come alive. They were driving off the ball in zone, but I think some of that trickled into their mentality in the pass pro. It's really two different worlds. I think where you would see, if you go back, watch where the offensive linemen were giving up hits, it was mainly on TE stunts, or tight end and end stunts, where our O-line was kind of lunging and attacking, and that's fine. It's called a jump set. You can jump set, but you have to know the weaknesses of jump setting. The jump set your hope is to get the D lineman in a run block mode instead of a pass rush mode. But our problem was that we would be leaning, and they would just, they would hit an edge real quick, or the guards would basically run block, which is fine. They would jump set, but the tackles would pass set. So they're on two entirely different levels, and then the twist would just get home every single time. It's just playing together at that point, being able to talk to the guy next to you and sort of work through the game together. I think these guys are still at a point where they're trying to figure out the general scheme design first before they can even get to that next level of, okay, hey, this guy's giving me trouble. I'm going to jump set him. I need you to jump set too. So that way, if they twist, we'll be on the same level. I think Julian's flying off the ball in the run game. It's awesome to watch, but he would do it in the pass game too. And because pass blocking as a center shouldn't be too difficult as a thing. You take your 2 steps back and you let everything come to you. It's actually that was the only fun part about playing center was getting to pass block. It's kind of like a free plus because you get the biggest, fattest guys. You just got to get in front of them and be strong. I think that's things that will come. It looked like they just wanted to come out here and just be physical, and that they were like, that's our goal. And if that's your goal, that's fine. But you have to understand, where that puts you in terms of pass blocking and how to fix it.
One thing about the O-line tonight, Vanderbilt did have penalties. That was one thing I was disappointed in. You knew that they couldn't do that again, right? And I'll have to look up the final count in a minute. I have it in front of me. But it seemed like at least tonight those weren't false starts and holding penalties. A lot of those had disproportionately been on the offensive line, and I don't remember if the line got a penalty tonight. Do you?
No, I don't. I don't think the offensive line got a penalty tonight, which is what I mentioned at the beginning of the show. One of my favorite things that I saw today. If you're going to have a less talented team, have less penalties. Be more disciplined. Don't have the other team beat you. That's kind of what happened tonight, and I can live with that kind of progress.
Defensively, they still couldn't get a pass rush home. You did see them try some things late. They brought, I think, Alan George on a corner blitz where he got home and disrupted a play. I think forced a punt. They did finally get a sack late in the game. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Davion
Owusu.
Davis and Owusu. That's who it was.
Davius got the first hit, and then Owusu finished it.
But, 11 quarters without a sack. Coming into the season, I did not think that was something I would be saying.
Yeah, if you're – and that's – maybe I'm totally wrong here because I never played defensive football, but I know it's more instinctual. I know from an X's and O standpoint, you have a set of preset rules before the play, and you go read, play. Play as fast as you can. It's not really as technical, I guess, in the introductory stages of offensive play, especially offensive line play. But if you're going to give up, 6, 7, or 11 yards of rush, when they get back to pass it, go balls to the wall, man. Try and get back there. I think a lot of the times the guys get locked up and then they're looking for that. I made a comment on the board, Chris, about it seems like we really rely on trying to swat the ball down the line of scrimmage the second we get stood up, and that kind of, it's not so much that you have to get home every time with the pass rush, but you have to get the quarterback to move off the spot. If you do that, that's what can create a sack. One of the most important things the O-lineman has to know before a pass play is the launch point, because sometimes the quarterback is the launch point of 3 steps, 5 steps, 7 steps, right? So if you can move him from that launch point, you might not get the sack, but the other end or the 3-tech, you force that pressure into the sack, or maybe you force the quarterback to step in a spot he doesn't like, throw a bad pass. That's what I want to see out of the D-line. You don't have to be getting sacks on sacks on sacks. That's not the issue. That's my problem when I see them just get locked up and then they're like, okay, I'm just going to hover the line of scrimmage and try and swat. You're going to get picked apart doing that.
Well, and let's give credit where it's due. I thought that Stanford's McKee, the quarterback who's fairly new, and their receivers were really good tonight. I'd give those guys an A for the job they did. His guys won a lot of contested battles, so he got some help there, but I thought he was good with the ball. He didn't make mistakes. There was one chance they had at a pick that Brennan Harris had it. It's a ball a lot of DBs drop.
Yeah, that's why they play defensive back.
Right. Probably was not going to make a difference, but I thought that Stanford, to its credit, did not give Vanderbilt a lot of cracks with its own mistakes to really give Vandy a shot to get it on a night where Stanford was clearly the more talented team.
Yeah, you have to give it to Stanford. Out of respect of an opponent, that's kind of, you look at that program and it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of what I want us to look like. They were a lot like us in a lot of ways, stylistically and everything. They do a lot more heavy set stuff on the goal line and on the red zone or on the short yardage. But other than that, it's a tale of two programs that come from the same backgrounds, and they play very disciplined. They have a lot of great athletes, but it's not over the top exceptional athletes, and they do more than what they're basically expected of. I think it's a good blueprint for Vanderbilt to follow. And the fact that Vanderbilt competed with them for, quite a long time, it was promising. I'm not one to be too much on the moral victories, but when you're sitting, when you're on the press box side of things instead of on the field side of things, you just start to see things differently, and you want to, I want to see it more long term now. And I think they did a lot of good things tonight. Is it perfect? No. Or so, do things have to get fixed and things have to get changed? Absolutely. But if you after that having to sit in the same chair and watch the 20-point loss to ETSU,
Yeah.
I'm feeling a lot better as we're going along in the season. People are learning, and these guys aren't. Props to the guys. You lose by 20 to an FCS team, you might as well quit the rest of the year. But these guys don't. It'd be so easy to quit. These guys don't do it. They come out here and they compete and they try to learn. I mean, some guys have great performances. Ethan Barr has had great performances each week. The dude looks like he's getting better all the time. He's fitting these holes so much quicker, especially on the stunts. A D lineman will shoot one gap, Ethan quickly finds the other, and it's a TFL. It's performances like that are starting to make me be a lot more positive.
Yeah, a few things I liked. Let's start on defense. DeRicky Wright had a big play early.
Still muted, Chris.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you'd think I'd know. One thing I liked tonight on defense, DeRicky Wright made a big play for them early. I think he was on the field more tonight, it seemed to me. I don't have snap counts in front of me. But he's a kid that can make a difference for them when he's out there, and we've known that since camp.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that when I see like making differences, the players we have are the players we got right now, right? I think expanding, quote unquote, the playbook is going to be the main thing that we see improvement with this team. I think it's the only way we can really improve, because the team is the team, right? So guys can come out like Williams and contribute, but it's not going to be very much game changing. If we want to see, solid, consistent, I guess you could say exponential level results, we're going to see the team start to be, maybe they'll get the screen game back, not the wide receiver screen game, but the running back screen game. If they ever get on a second or third and long, that could be a way they can convert, and that could be an extra point on a series, or an extra few points on a series that might have been 0, and that could be the difference with when a game wins or loses. I think that's, these guys learning the nuances of those type of plays and eventually adding it to the playbook. I think that's going to be where we see the most improvement, rather than just, hoping a guy comes in and changes. Only one guy can do so much. There's 22 players on that field. So we can see some of the best individual performances in football. We see in the NFL every week. I mean, Daniel Jones on Thursday Night Football had an amazing performance, but the rest of his team is just, falling behind so much. So it is promising to see individuals like Williams, kind of step up. But the main way this team's going to improve is just coming in, week out, and bringing it from practice to the games, and then we're playing the long game. I think it's all understood. We're playing the long game with Vanderbilt football right now.
When you say Williams, you mean Alex Williams?
Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
And unfortunately, he had just a dumb penalty tonight. I don't know how else to say it. A quarterback or whoever it was out of bounds, and 3 yards, and he gives him a shove, and it's a personal foul. And I saw him come out. I don't know if he came back in, but I made the observation, because he's a kid that you go to camp and you watch him play and you're like, why is he not on the field more? Because they don't have a lot of guys who are athletes like him. But when you say that, that's not necessarily a criticism of the coaches, right? The coaches have their reasons. Guys have got to pay attention to details, get their assignments right, not do dumb things. And that left me thinking, and because that always goes in my head, when a guy's not on the field enough, I'm thinking it's something like that the coaches don't like, that doesn't always show up in what you see. And lo and behold, I don't know if it's fair to Alex to say that, but man, it happened right in front of your eyes tonight.
Yeah, it is. And if you don't mind, Chris, I'm going to sort of because we always end up getting to like our interactions late, so I'll change the subject on something. So a few more things I want to talk about, and then we'll get to the post on the board. But real quick, wide receivers, it was kind of an off day for them. Especially for our guy Chris Pierce. He had a pretty big open drop, and the 50-50 balls just weren't there for them. That's the risk you run when you throw the 50-50 balls. Chris knows he has to come down with them. Cam Johnson kind of had, he just wasn't targeted that much tonight. Shepard took most of the load, and Shepard played really well, but it just wasn't enough. the pass blocking was the main issue by far. Ken just had to move off the spot too much, getting hit right after the throws, the pressures. That's mainly what caused the INTs. And I guess kind of a quote unquote hot take would be, if this team was more disciplined and talented and game ready, a guy like Ken would probably be the best quarterback. The one that would give the team the most potential to win. But Mike Wright seems like the type of guy that could make more plays on the less disciplined team, and maybe it's a tough. I don't envy this coaching staff and having to make the choices they have to make because it's they're in a tough position right now. The Jimmy and Joes. I'm probably more harder on the players, and that comes from back when I played. That's the way we handle things. I'm probably more harder on the players than most people, because it's not all coaching. Like I made the statement that the coaching wasn't what collapsed the last 2 minutes of that half. It was pressure on Ken. He threw a bad pick because of the pressure, and then the punt was down the middle. If you were coached to punt inbounds on that situation, that could be called coaching. But these are players. It's players making mistakes, and you got to take that accountability with it.
One thing. We've gotten this far, and we haven't talked about Ray Davis. And Ray Davis was the kind of guy that, like, if it had gone well, and the end of the first half goes differently, he doesn't get hit, doesn't get hurt, whatever. And frankly, seeing him in a boot and Clark Lee not being able to give us a very reassuring explanation of what was going on, boy, that was depressing to hear that, because Ray. What did he finish with? I don't know if he went over 100, but he was close.
12 carries with 76 yards.
Yeah, like if he is
average 6.3 yards a rush.
Yeah, and look, if the game flows different and he's out there, this could be one of those games where he ends the night with, 25 for $190 and a couple scores, and again, that's going to rely on things different than him, but. It could have been a big night for him, and now I just hope they have him. You talked about the screen game. He's a guy that can help them in that, but, man, I've been concerned. You and I were both concerned all camp that he got held out a lot, and with his running style, it's physical, and I love the way he plays, right? But it lends itself to injuries, especially when the creases you're going to be running through generally aren't huge, and, boy, if he's gone – And hats off to Rocco Griffin. He played really well tonight. But Ray can do some things that Rocco just can't. And, the hope is that he's not out long. But seeing a guy in a boot doesn't make you feel great, especially when that boot's under a knee brace.
Yeah, that was and I kind of knew we knew he was struggling with injury throughout camp. He was taking a lot of those quote unquote load management type days, and I get it. He's playing one of the most physical positions in the most physical game, in the country, right, at one of the highest levels. So having him go down, I was a little worried when he went down. It was kind of going to be like a similar Keyshawn Vaughn in Florida 2018 situation where the second Keyshawn went out, everything just collapsed. But props to the team. That's one thing that's unique about this team is offensively, like all around, they didn't quit. And Rocco came in, and Rocco was like, "Yeah, all right, I'm gonna show up, and I'm gonna give it my all. I'm gonna produce." And so I think that was a little bit of a reassuring thing. Whereas we've seen in the past teams, like my team in 18, where we kind of collapsed under that same situation. This team, persevered through. So I think that was at least a plus you could take out of it. Do you want a guy like Davis back? Absolutely, he's an amazing player. But football's about managing and adapting. So let's see how they can adapt.
I know that you had some things you wanted to hit. That included the mailbag, so I'll let you drive it from here for a bit.
Perfect. We got some really good questions this week. All right, Ann Arbor Door says, grade the O-line A, B, C, D, or F, and why. Be specific and use examples. I was thinking about – I saw this one early, like right when I posted the thread, so I've been thinking about it all day. And – if the rushing game was, what we saw maybe in the first two games, it would have been an F performance from the O-line tonight. They didn't give up a million sacks, but the pressure was there all night. But it's probably just a C performance because a 200 yards rushing is something I would have killed for when I played every single game. Like that's a solid number. And you have to give credit is where credit's due. It's not like they were giving up a lot of – the thing is, Chris, is they weren't giving up many TFLs, if at all. It was all every single run we had tonight was an efficient run. That's something that you have to acknowledge. The run game was high level tonight. The guys were playing at a high level in the run. The pass was an F. So where the run was probably a B plus, the pass block was an F. Just way too many hits on Ken. That's, Ken's a tough kid. The kid's dropping his shoulder all the time. First of all, he's got to stop doing that. I love it, but the dude's got to stop doing that. But so the kid, obviously, he can take some contact, but when you're a quarterback, it's such a mental game. When you get hit, it's going to affect you. So I give the O-line a C minus. Not a C. I'll give them a C minus because of. It's when you play O-line, it's the thankless position. You play every single play, and you got to be perfect every single play, and you can't afford to make those mistakes. I'll give them a C because of the penalties. They had so many penalties on the first two games. We'll just give them the flat C because they at least improved in a lot of ways. They still need to improve a ton, but I think they found their 5 they want to play too. So now these guys can start to mesh. Do you want to give a grade, Chris, or are you good?
Well, I was just going to say you have a good point. I'm trying to find the tackles for loss stat. I don't remember a lot of times that
let me see if I can find it too.
Their receivers their running backs got caught in the backfield. Now, in college stats, this is not this way in the NFL, but those come off the rushing total. So some of the rushing yardage that was negative tonight would have been on Seals sacks. Stanford had 3 tackles for loss. Only one of them was a sack. So I guess there were a couple of runs that were caught in the backfield.
I remember one was like one of those short yardage ones that got hit really quick. I think Rocco got blown up at the point. I think one was like where Ken technically had to pull. So 1 tackle for loss. That's an impressive day.
Yeah, when it comes to grading the offensive line and judging that, I'm always gonna see that to you because you know what you're talking about and I don't. Anyway,
no problem. Knoxville Door 94 says, could we have a worse last 3 minutes of half number 1? Quick answer, no. Door King says, looks like they're playing pretty good game, so this was during the game, but we just don't have the players to make any mistakes. No margin for error. I do think coaches have the guys improving. I mean, I think Door King is echoing exactly what our thoughts are, Chris.
Look, we're gonna have this conversation a lot this year.
Yeah, for sure.
There's going to be games where the coaching staff, there's going to be some things they leave out there for you to criticize, and we've had those so far. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know that the record, even if they coach a perfect game, is going to be better than. I mean, look, they should have won the ETSU game, but we've been over that. But whether that number's 3 wins, 4 wins, whatever it should be, I just don't think it goes much higher. You hope that they improve through the season and that they develop players and get them better for next year. I mean that's your thing that you're looking for is how much better are your freshmen, sophomores, juniors getting at the end of the year, because those are going to be the guys that have to carry you next year. And oh, by the way, I know they don't like to recruit transfers a ton, but that might be one that they're going to have to give on a little bit, because otherwise then it's a really long rebuild.
Yeah, they might want to start. All right, I think on ahead, Chris. Moving on, Vandy36. He real quick. He's a guy I met at the game. Listen, fans. I was a little worried that we were going to see less than ETSU, but the guys are performing. So come out, say hi. Vandy36, it was nice to meet you and your son. Say hi anytime. Door King asks, is the run blocking better than the pass protection? We're talking about like B+ level tonight, run blocking versus F level pass protection. It was 2 different worlds tonight. Let's see.
I meant to ask you something. You mentioned tight ends needing to help in the pass blocking game. Of course, they're without their stud tight end, Ben Bresnahan. He's been out a couple games now. How much does he help? I think of him more as a receiver, but how much does he help when he's back?
I really don't think he helps much. I know it's a common theme to bring tight ends into protection for like a quote unquote max or 7-man protection, but Ben needs to be out there in the spread. That's where he thrives. And these guys need to. I think the best number for protection is 6. The 5 linemen and the running back. You can go empty with 5 linemen sometimes, but that requires a really, really settled in quarterback that can take pressure off the edge and make that quick read. You want to get used to the 6-man protection with the 5-0 lineman and the running back. That's like the sweet spot. So that way Ben can get out into the route. I don't want him to be too, encased in protection. That's a guy we need out there as a weapon. These 5-0 linemen and the running back need to, eventually find that gel together.
Well, and being big does not make you a blocker, but it makes it maybe a little bit easier. And when they've got Bresnahan and Ray Davis out, their biggest tight end, their biggest tight end that they use a lot. And you look at their running backs, so this was a concern I had before the season. These guys are not big, Bruno. They're not big guys at all.
No, they're not. I mean, you could tell by the opening kickoff. You could tell it was like a tale of two worlds.
Well, and the point is, if blocking's already an issue and you're without your tight end, and you're without your most physically put together running back, that just makes it tougher.
Yeah. Moving on, let's see. Pass protection. J2M says pass protection was abysmal once again. Is the staff doing a good job with talent they have, or is this coaching to blame? I think, if coaching was as easy as, hey, we're going to fix run blocking and pass blocking both this week, that would be great. But you only have so much time throughout the week to try and edge out those little minute details. And I think this week, they were really about the run. So, maybe next week they'll start working on the pass, or they'll be like, okay, this is what we'll identify what was going on worst with us, and this is what it was. There's only so much time in the weekend. It's only so much time in the season to get your practice in. So I could they be better? Obviously, but I'm not ready to say like, oh, this is a coaching issue. I don't think so. I think the coach is doing well. At least they're improving in some aspect. I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way they looked in fall camp and the way they looked against CTSU, if you'd said, hey, 2 weeks from now, they're going to run the ball against Stanford pretty well, I don't know that I would have believed you, but we saw some of that tonight. But it's like they said, it's like Clark said in the postgame, they can't keep everything together at once. And frankly, that's just going to be a difficult thing to do all year because, again, you look at the talent gap between them and who they play. And by the way, I did nothing today from 11 o'clock on but watch SEC football. I had 2 TVs up and a phone. So sometimes I'm watching 3 games at once. And just I look around at the league. Everybody else is faster at receiver and in the back end. Everybody else is more physical, bigger in the trenches, and if there was a fix for that in 1 year, I would like to know what that was.
Yeah.
And Clark Lee would too.
Yeah. If Clark Lee managed to, find that holy mecca, he'd be coach of the year. And I was saying if he was getting 6-6, he'd be coach of the year. That's how impressive the jump would be with what they have now, especially what we saw last year, And that's why, we just lost 40-something, 20-something, but I think there's a ton of positives you can take from this game, and there's a ton of positives that there's at least a future for this team. I can see it. I'm more on the optimistic side coming out of this side. So we only got a few more posts. Baseball Bros basically asked the same thing. Was it me, or did the offense seem to lose its tempo and go more huddle once they were down, which seems to make zero sense? The play calling didn't seem to be the same in the second half, and it seemed to be a much more conservative. And we already sort of touched on that, Chris. You can't just go tempo forever. It's a very, very limited very, very limited book. So these guys have to learn how to operate out of the huddle, operate out of the motions, operate the kills. I don't even think they kill any plays yet. I don't think they're at that level of an offense yet. So that's stuff they have to practice and learn. And it's growing pains, sadly.
The other thing that I didn't like tonight, a lot of their third down routes were short of the sticks. And I don't know, maybe that's just because they don't have time. You can't on one hand say, hey, they didn't call plays that develop downfield and say, well, they can't pass protect, because then at some point there's a disconnect in your logic.
Yeah.
But is it bad enough that on 3rd and 5 that you're sending a guy 3 yards deep? I mean, surely they've got enough time to send a guy a yard past the sticks, right?
And I get it. But the problem with that, and that was the last. This will be the last topic because that was the last question. I get it. But the problem with that thought of logic is you practice that route over and over in the off season. By yourselves in practice time. You practice that route, and the timing is super important. And you can't just be like, okay, take 1 or 2 steps forward more and make sure you get the first down. You can't do that. You just have to go with how you're coached. Because you take 1 or 2 steps more, and Ken throws the ball early. On what he thought was the normal timing, the DB breaks on it, pick 6, right? So I know it's frustrating to see Will Shepherd, be so close to the first down every single time he catches it. But if that's the route, that's the route. We got to live with it.
Maybe a better solution is get yourself in 3rd and 1 and 2 rather than 7 and 8.
Exactly. 100%.
I should coach this team.
I don't know if you want there's some pressure to coach in Vanderbilt, man. This is not an easy job. There's a lot to be fixed, but I'm optimistic after today.
And the thing with Clark that's been the focal point of discussion is the stoic demeanor, and that got beat to death after the ETSU game. And I'm not saying it was unfair, but I think you heard him tonight. It was clear he wasn't pleased with his team. He wasn't throwing it under the bus. He wasn't screaming and yelling. But it wasn't just, okay, we lost a game either.
Yeah.
And on the sidelines tonight, from what I could see from TV and reading the board and what some people said, he got into his guys a bit tonight, especially on defense. And you did see some spirited play at times. I thought you saw it towards the end of the first half. I thought their stand that they had, first and goal at the 2, and they held, and that was big at the time. They go 98 yards, and they get a score themselves. But then he talked about them coming out flat in the second half. He said first half the failures were more along the lines of structural and execution. The second half it sounded like, he didn't say effort, but maybe passion. And you would have to watch the press conference. I may be butchering what he said, but that's how I took it. And I thought that was interesting too, is that he seemed to be calling, I don't know, again, my words, the motor in question a little bit late in the game, whereas he wasn't in the first half.
Yeah, I think the last 2 minutes of the half, definitely it did a number on the players. Obviously being down 3 with a chance to score, and then all of a sudden you blink and you're down 13 or you're down double digits and you're going into halftime. You're like, what just happened? I get it, and that's and I get Clark's obviously the type of coach that wants these guys to play like it's their last down every single down, and I would have liked playing under Coach Lee. Him and I. I was a lot of the same too, but you could see there was obviously times where he got emotional. He did get into his guys. He was getting into his guys, and they would go out and they would execute. And I like to see that. It was good. We're starting to see him, open up.
Georgia next week, that won't be easy. Georgia got up quickly on South Carolina and just closed out. I think it was 40-6, 40-13, something like that. And then I think is Connecticut in 2 weeks.
Yep, UConn's the next one after Georgia,
and that's one they can win. So
100. Well, I think there should be UConn. UConn looks like the worst football program in history right now.
Yeah. So it's that. It's next week's going to be tough under any circumstance. But if you get 1 in 2 weeks, you feel a little better about things, and then you wait to see what happens in the season today. Like Mississippi State lost a game to Memphis. That State probably doesn't think it should have lost. Almost, frankly, could have lost to Louisiana Tech, too. Mm-hmm. And so if you just keep your heads up, keep making progress here in the air, again, we saw it in the running game tonight, then maybe there's something for the taking there at the back end of the schedule we're not seeing. But, boy, next week, that one's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think this team has a chance to surprise some people and maybe knock 1 or 2 off. I just don't think it'll be next week.
Yeah, no. Bruno, parting thoughts, because I think otherwise it's time to end.
Yeah, so main takeaway that I want people to see from the night. I think we saw more good than we would have expected 2 or 3 weeks ago after ETSU.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was such a tough loss for everybody, you know, fans, but the coaches and players more than anything. They're the guys who are personally invested in this thing. So it wasn't easy for them to see them come back and start to be competitive again. That was a big plus. I hope, obviously, Davis's injury is very minimum. We can see that guy play again. But I think we just stick to it. You know, I don't really advocate for the quarterback change either. I think we just stick with the guys we got out there now and hopefully build some chemistry and try and knock some guys off.
Bruno, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Bruno will be joining me every week after the game. We're going to be doing this all games this year on our YouTube channel. So if you have not subscribed, please do so. Please tell some friends. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers. That helps us out a lot. So if you haven't subscribed and you're watching this, please do. Again, tell a friend. That helps us out. But Bruno, thanks for joining me tonight. Have a safe trip home, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks, we'll do. I'm the last one in the press box, so let me get out of here so these guys can go home.
All right, he's Bruno Reagan. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for watching the VandySports postgame.